found out my wife was having an affair. I didn't fight or make a scene. Instead of calling her out, I acted more thoughtful toward her and was more generous with her parents. Eventually, she realized just how scary I could be. I'm Felix, a web novelist. 2 years ago, I found out my wife was seeing someone else. I was supposed to go to City A for an author event hosted by a novel platform. My wife was upstairs packing for me. I was in the living room when I happened to see a text pop up on her phone. "See you tonight, babe. Room's booked." So, I quietly canceled my trip, trailed her that night, and watched as a guy put his arm around her and they walked into a hotel. But I didn't do what most guys might do, like charge in there ready to fight or create some drama in the hotel room. I just felt a bit of dark humor. My wife, who seemed so gentle and virtuous, had it in her to mess around with some other guy. After a few days of brooding in a motel, I pretended to return from City A. I gave her a big hug as soon as I got home. Seeing her hesitance in my arms gave me a weird thrill. A twisted kind of thrill. We've been married for 6 years and have a 5-year-old son. My in-laws help take care of him. Our life has looked perfect and happy. People say I'm lucky to have such a great wife. But this family everyone envies is about to hit a storm. After discovering her affair, I started noticing how my son didn't really look like me. A scary thought crept into my mind. But I never got a DNA test. Instead, I poured all my affection onto him. I'd buy him toys, take him to amusement parks, make him his favorite meals, drop him off and pick him up from preschool, and play games with him. The reasoning behind this is pretty simple. If he is my son, he's soon going to be part of a broken home. What I'm doing is just a small compensation for that. And if he's not my son, then being good to him is part of my bigger revenge plan. My wife, Lily, isn't exactly stunning, but she's cute, has a great figure, and carries herself with grace. She's one of my fans and used to send me generous gifts on the novel platform. Eventually, we added each other on WeChat, and here we are now living together. I truly liked her. Not only is she pretty and elegant, but she's also gentle and caring. Friends say I must have done something good in a past life to marry her. I was secretly happy too, until I found out she cheated on me. The craziest part? Her cheating wasn't some random fling. For 2 years, she's been with the same guy, her immediate boss. If she had been with multiple men, I could say she was just being wild. But her loyalty to a single man made me think she genuinely loved him. One morning, Lily reminded me it was her dad's birthday, so I should buy some tea and ingredients to cook dinner at their place. I said sure. My mother-in-law used to run a small restaurant, making a living the hard way, and hasn't saved much for retirement. My father-in-law retired from a state-owned steel company as a worker. His pension isn't much, but it's enough for them to get by. That wasn't so bad. But now my father-in-law suddenly claims he wants another son. He thinks raising a son alongside a grandson isn't a big deal. Of course, Lily and her mom are against this, citing traditional beliefs, age, stamina, financial security, you name it. Honestly, I'm okay. I make good money from writing now and wanted to help out. But things got twisted because his daughter cheated. Felix, did you see the news about that woman in her 60s having twins through IVF? My father-in-law excitedly pointed it out on his computer as I stepped into their house. Dad, I did see that. If that's what you want, I'm behind you. I'll always have your back. I immediately transferred him $3,000. Use this for IVF. If it's not enough, I'll help more. Since the cheating, I've been showering her parents with kindness, even more than their own daughter does. Because they're essential in my revenge plan. The excitement on his face was real. He even brought out 2 bottles of his best wine to celebrate later. While preparing the meal, he was all smiles, helping with the chopping and prepping. I knew he now saw me as his personal ATM. After my mother-in-law picked up the kid from preschool, I asked Lily when she'd be home from work and told her to drive safely. I set up the prepared dishes, placing a birthday cake in the center. Under the candlelight, looking at these familiar yet strange faces, a cold laugh escaped me. Lily told us not to drink too much, but my father-in-law just laughed and said with a son-in-law like Felix, he had every reason to be happy and intended to drink the night away. Lily got a text message mid-meal. She said she needed to work late and told me to crash at her parents' if I drank too much. She wasn't fooling me. I knew her angle. With blurred vision, I told her gently, "Hun, if you didn't eat enough here, get something on the way. Don't go hungry, okay?" After she left, I started getting some photos and a video. All of them were about her and that guy. Since catching her the first time, I had someone keep tabs on their every move. Now I've got a cloud storage full of evidence of their affair, ready to be used. After I drank her dad under the table, I played games with my son until he fell asleep, making sure he had his nightly milk and bedtime story. I've spoiled him into the house's little tyrant, letting him live freely so he'll depend on me. When Lily and I get divorced, I don't plan to take him. Hopefully, he ends up resenting her. Let their relationship be strained. With that satisfying thought, I left him with his grandma and called it a night. Now, my income from writing is way beyond what Lily makes. 2 years ago, I handed over all my earnings to her. After discovering my wife was cheating, I only handed over a small portion of my manuscript fee. But it was still double her salary, so she didn't notice anything. Just to be safe, I registered another pen name using my dad's ID. The bulk of the payments went to my dad's account. Plus, our house is my premarital property, so it's mine after a divorce. My finances won't take much of a hit afterward. When my wife came home late one night, a twisted impulse hit me. As she closed the door, before she could even turn on the light, I leapt from the shadows, grabbing her while cackling maniacally. She thought I was staying with her folks, so she was caught off guard and totally freaked out, accusing me of being crazy. She wasn't wrong. I feel like I'm losing it. But, honestly, if she hadn't cheated, I wouldn't be like this, so dark and twisted. Lying awake in the dark, my eyes darted around restlessly. So, I started looking through the photos and videos saved in my cloud drive. They're bubbling beneath the surface like magma, waiting for that explosive moment. I've been going to my in-laws almost daily, partly to bond with my son, making him more attached to me, and partly to play nice with them, setting the stage for the eventual big reveal. The next day was the Dragon Boat Festival. My wife was working again. Spent $200 on a set of Ultraman toys for my son, dropped a few grand on a pair of jade bracelets for my mother-in-law, and shelled out over $1,000 on 2 bottles of good wine for my father-in-law. I wasn't stingy with my gifts. Although my father-in-law has always been pretty materialistic, my mother-in-law has been kind. She helps with our son, so part of it was gratitude. But mostly it was revenge. "Felix, why are you spending money like this again? You should be saving while you're young and earning decent money," Mom-in-law chided, but I saw a smile creeping in. Handing over the gifts, I said, "Don't be so formal with me. You guys help us out with our son. It's the least I can do to show my appreciation." Putting more emotion into it, I added, "Your daughter turned out so well, and trusting her to me, no amount of gifts could repay that. Felix, you're a good kid." She teared up a bit, moved by my words. Dad-in-law stashed the wine, then chuckled. "Felix worked hard cooking yesterday, so let's let the missus handle it today." After she headed to the kitchen, he leaned in, whispering about the IVF. "I spoke with your mom. She was hesitant, but finally agreed." Enthusiasm bubbled over, and I slapped my leg. "Great." He looked a bit startled by my reaction. Regaining my composure, I said, "Dad, I'm happy for you too. Now Lily and I will have a baby brother." Eyebrows raised with pride, he said, "That's the spirit, son." After a pause, he added, a bit awkward, "I heard there's a higher chance of twins through IVF than natural birth." "It's fantastic. Who doesn't want twins?" Our excitement was mutual, but for different reasons. "If they are boys, they'll need a house," he worried, fixing his gaze on me. "Don't worry about a thing, Dad. My manuscript fees are more than enough for everything," I assured him confidently. Relieved, he nodded, musing aloud, "The main thing will be a house for them." "Leave it to me," I said firmly, suppressing a chuckle. I hadn't expected my revenge plan to progress so smoothly. A broad grin stretched across his face. "Felix, we're counting on you. You're much more reliable than our daughter." A few days later, they attempted IVF, but it didn't work. That evening, I mentioned it to my wife, suggesting taking money from our savings so they could try again in a bigger city. Her reaction caught me off guard. Felix, are you insane? Supporting their IVF without me knowing? If it works, guess who's left holding the bag? They're nearly 60. She stared at me as if I'd lost it. Explain yourself. Why are you so eager for them to have a son? Are they your parents or mine? Gently holding her, I explained, honey, they've always supported us. From raising you to babysitting, they've got this unresolved thing about not having a son. We can finally help. With more books, we'll manage anything. Smirking inside, I kept a concerned face. Feeling I'd taken enough responsibility, she didn't argue further, just looked puzzled. I knew it was almost done. With the house premarital, the bulk of my money wired elsewhere, the next step was to drain her cash. Thinking of her leaving with nothing, a grin spread, but I knew there were still questions of costs and housing for the parents' potential kids. Babe, I already talked to Dad about this. I'll buy the house for the kid. The long novel I wrote a couple of years ago is still in the process of getting its movie rights signed. When that's done, we'll have enough to buy not one, but 2 houses, I said, patting my wife's shoulder, just making stuff up. A movie deal is worth that much? Her eyes lit up. I nodded with a smile. Seeing me nod, she finally smiled too. Before my in-laws headed off to a city, we had a family dinner at a restaurant. Coincidentally, my wife's colleague was also dining there. He walked over all gentlemanlike to greet us. I immediately recognized him. He was the guy my wife cheated with, her department head. He spoke politely and acted well-mannered, but I could still tell there was some flirtation between them. I picked up a toothpick, cleaning my teeth while eyeing the guy, and suddenly chuckled sarcastically. Felix, you okay? My father-in-law looked puzzled by me. I quickly adjusted my expression and forced a smile. Oh, nothing, Dad. Just happy for you guys. He still looked confused, so I added, I'm sure things will work out once you reach a city. I'll definitely give the kid a great gift. Thank you, Felix. You're so good to us. Having a son-in-law like you is a blessing. My heart was cold, but I tried to maintain my warmest smile. No need to thank me, Dad. It's what I should do. I'll hire a caretaker for you guys in the future so you don't have to worry much. Felix, you're so considerate. He patted my shoulder, looking pleased. Seeing his satisfied face, I smiled too, though he had his smile and I had mine. Mom, Dad, we can't go with you, but be safe in a city. Once you're out of the airport, take a cab. Don't penny pinch. My wife wiped her mouth with a napkin, looking worried. Got it, sweetie. We're just in our 50s and still quite strong. My father-in-law confidently flexed his arm. My wife nodded and turned to me. Felix, why don't you take Mom and Dad home first? Johnny and I need to head back to the office to work on a bid. She stole a glance at Johnny, probably causing a little thrill for him. Ha! These shameless lovebirds, openly flirting in front of me. I quickly grabbed Johnny's hand, holding it tight, looking like a fool who tries to flatter someone who's messing with his wife. Hey Johnny, Lily always speaks highly of you. Thanks for looking out for her. Please continue to support her, I said, lightly patting his hand. Johnny looked back with a grin. Perhaps only I noticed the mockery, disdain, and glee in his eyes. Strangely, I enjoyed the feeling, though it's a bit twisted. Johnny thinks I'm clueless, but I've seen right through him. It's funny how they're both under my control. After we got back, I told my father-in-law, Dad, just work with the doctors on the IVF process in a city. Don't worry about costs. Even if you end up with twins, I can handle it. Each novel is a house. I just need to write more. He was ecstatic. Felix, that's great. People say a brother-in-law is like a father. You've been like a father to my kids. They'll be good to you when they grow up. Of course. My wife didn't come home until the next night. Her hair looked freshly washed, like she'd just showered. And she did. The photos from the person I hired showed them hitting that hotel again. At home, she was extra attentive, trying to cover up her deeds. Felix, when will your movie deal come through? Everything okay with it? She asked. I bit into the apple with confidence. Don't worry. My editor's pretty reliable. Hope it goes well. We're counting on you now, she smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder. Sure thing, babe. Good days are ahead. Go to sleep, I'll join you soon. She kissed my cheek lightly and went to the bedroom. I stared at her back blankly, wiping the kiss spot. 2 months later, my father-in-law came over, grinning, announcing my mother-in-law was pregnant with twins. I couldn't help but laugh in surprise. 2 boys. They really over-delivered. This was going better than I'd expected. Dad, let me transfer you 20 grand. Get some nourishment for Mom. Let's make sure everything goes smoothly, I said, gleefully transferring the money. Great, thanks. As needed, he replied, checking the cash got through. What about the house for the kids, Felix? He asked after a moment. I paused before answering, Dad, they aren't born yet. Felix, the house prices are rising fast. Can't take any chances, he said. True, houses are getting pricey. My movie deal should be set in 2 months. How about using your savings and a mortgage on your house for the down payment? Are you sure about your deal in 2 months? He asked. I met his eyes and nodded firmly. Well, we're using all we have. My retirement won't cover this, he worried. I'll handle it, I assured. In my head, I was thinking, I won't just be covering these few months of mortgage payments. I'll handle the payments for months to come, right up until the 2 kids are born. After some intense persuasion, my father-in-law managed to convince my mother-in-law. They pulled out their savings and property docs, and we all walked into the sales office of an apartment complex under construction. Eventually, we bought 2 150 square meter apartments and successfully got a $2 million loan from the bank to be repaid over 30 years. But here's the kicker. I already knew from a reliable source that this complex was going to be abandoned mid-construction for some reason. Leaving the sales office, I looked at the bright sun and slowly let out a breath. The groundwork for my revenge plan was almost complete. Just one last step. I needed to wait for those kids to be born. I had to keep up the act until then. 6 months later, before the kids were even born, I found an excuse to stop paying my father-in-law's loan. By then, my mother-in-law was visibly pregnant. Those kids were fully formed, too late to abort. Ha! Stabbing them in the back at such a crucial moment must have been painful, right? I admit it, I've become darker. But can you really blame me? Didn't my wife push me into this? If she hadn't cheated, if she weren't hell-bent on continually cheating, would I be like this? And let's not pretend my father-in-law's a saint. Before our marriage, he barely looked at me straight, said the nastiest things. Then he saw I made money writing and shamelessly asked for help raising his son and buying 2 apartments. Now I have him begging me time and again. Felix, did your royalties come through this month? Can you lend me 6 grand? If we don't pay on time, the debt will grow and grow. He walked into my place, face full of worry. I looked at him too, taking in the silver hair with satisfaction. Dad, the editor said the platform's preparing to go public, so there's a lot going on. The royalties are delayed until next month. What? What are we going to do? Your mother's about to give birth, we need money now. For the loan too. He gave me a quick glance of disapproval but masked it fast, still hoping for my money. Don't worry, Dad. I'll think of something else. I acted all thoughtful and worried. After a while, I suddenly looked up. Dad, how about we mortgage this place? We could get quite a bit of money from that. Yes. What a good idea. He finally seemed a bit relieved. Felix, let's go right now. Hold on, I've got to check in with Lily first. Something big. If I don't run it by her, she'll have my head. I showed a seemingly troubled look. He got a bit annoyed. Fine. Call her then, but hurry up. I nodded and dialed my wife, making sure to put it on speaker so my father-in-law could hear. The moment the call connected, I gestured for him to stay quiet. Hun, are you busy? We need to talk. If you've got something, spit it out. I got stuff to do. She shot back quickly. Dad needs to make a loan payment on those apartments. My royalties are delayed. They'll come next month. Can we mortgage our place to cover it? As expected, she unleashed her fury. Felix, have you lost it? Did you run it by me when you decided to help them buy those apartments? Now there's a problem, and you want to mortgage our home? What's going through your head? Listen, stop targeting our house. Go find another way. I could almost picture her rage through the phone screen. I saw my father-in-law go pale in anger, so I egged her on. Babe, look, Mom's due in a few months. We need money now. Could you at least consider? Don't bring up those kids. Raise them if you want. I'm not getting involved. You all already ruined this family. She practically screamed, and it left my ears ringing. I hurriedly hung up the phone. Ungrateful brat. Damn ungratefulness. My father-in-law shouted, starting to shake. Raising this daughter was for nothing. I'm heading to her work right now. Just watch me. I rushed to stop him, pretending to calm him down. Dad, let's wait until she comes home, and I'll try to talk to her. Move. Felix. I need to sort her out today. We raised her. And now when we need help, she chooses to ignore us. He shook my hand off, storming out. The moment he left, I couldn't help but burst into tears of laughter. Over 2 years, I'd given my wife plenty of chances. Just end things with that idiot and I'd have dropped the revenge plan. At least it wouldn't have been this bad. But she insisted on her affair, draining our savings, piling up debt, and throwing the house into chaos. This mess is all her doing, not mine. I never wanted to ruin our family, but what choice did I have? This family drama is going to make her and her father pay heavily for what they've done. The backlash is far from over. Though knowing my mother-in-law's caught in the crossfire, maybe even suffering the most, I do feel bad. After all, she's treated me kindly. For now, it's out of my hands. I'll try to make it up to her in the future. I turned on my computer and clicked on my cloud drive, starting to sort through 2 years' worth of photos and videos. On a whim, I played a video from a couple of months back and couldn't help but chuckle. It was filmed by someone I hired, spying on my wife. While it wasn't evidence of her affair, I kept it anyway. When her father confronted her at work, he looked practically deranged. That incident drove a wedge between them. Her reputation at work took a hit too, colleagues thinking she's unfilial and morally questionable. I closed the video and moved it to a separate folder. In the folder, there are a dozen photos and a video. I labeled it with the location and time. There are 47 more folders like this. Over 2 years, 47 times. That's twice a month. Looking at it this way, her infidelity rate is high. As her husband, I'm just for show. After organizing those photos and videos, I copied them to 3 USB drives just in case. There'll be strong evidence for divorce. I picked a few striking photos and made a short video. Who knows, it might come in handy. After doing this, I couldn't sit still anymore. My mother-in-law is due any day. If I don't go and be part of it, how can I call myself a good son-in-law? My in-laws must be getting old. They hadn't properly shut the front door, leaving a palm-sized gap. Carrying gift boxes, I pushed the door open and walked straight into the living room. I heard them talking in the bedroom. They hadn't noticed me yet. I was about to go in, but froze when I heard a conversation I shouldn't have. Should we have taken out a loan so early? 2 homes and we're behind 2 months on the mortgage. The debt's growing. You think what Felix told us about the movie rights is true? Clearly, my father-in-law has started to doubt. I used to think it was mostly true, but now, well, if things don't change, we might have to sell those homes. Back then, no one wanted Lily because she was pregnant with someone else's kid. I had to find a good son-in-law for her. Hearing this, I was stunned, my mind blank. No wonder she got pregnant so soon after we got married. Now I get it. Though she miscarried after a fall, I was their scapegoat. They treated me like this all along. My mother-in-law's kindness to me was fake, out of guilt. I felt a rush of anger and my vision went red. If the last bit of attachment has vanished, I can go ahead and retaliate. Once I made up my mind, I calmed down quickly. Barely making a sound, I backed out and closed the door, waiting a moment before knocking. My father-in-law opened the door, his frown turning to a smile. Felix, you're here. Any news on the movie rights? I shook my head, forcing a smile. Nope, still nothing. Let's wait a bit longer. Oh, really? He watched me closely. You seem upset. What's wrong? Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't check well enough. The housing development you bought into went under. Covered my face, faking despair. Inside, I was trying not to laugh. I knew about it days ago, just hadn't decided when to tell them. Now seemed perfect. What? Are you serious? Shocked, my father-in-law grabbed his chest and sat on the sofa. I rushed to comfort him as he gripped my hand. Felix, you'll cover the loan, right? We can't manage it. You promised. Dad. Before I could continue, his phone rang. Dad, is Felix there? He hasn't picked up the kid. The art class ended, and now the child is alone, crying. Dad. I cried out. I'm sorry. I can't be your son-in-law anymore. Before he could react, I added, Lily cheated. Felix, what are you saying? My wife's tone softened instantly. Dad, Lily's been with Johnny in her department for at least 3 years. Someone sent me their date photos. I was clueless until I saw them. Knowing this, I can't write, so I haven't earned anything lately. Lily, is this true? My mother-in-law grabbed the phone and raged. Mom, let me explain. My wife's voice was weak. Thud. The phone hit the floor. My mother-in-law collapsed too. When she was taken to the ambulance, I slipped away. I'd done enough for them. My head was spinning. I didn't want to go home, so I hid in a motel. I couldn't understand how, after working so hard, I was living like this at almost 30. My wife wasn't really mine. The kid probably wasn't mine. And even I didn't feel like myself. Staring into the bathroom mirror, the reflection felt strange and terrifying. I was consumed by bitterness, becoming twisted and dark inside. Would this revenge ease my resentment? I don't know yet. Maybe time will tell. When I turned my phone back on, it had been nearly a day since I left. There were dozens of missed calls, mostly from my wife and a few from my father-in-law. I sipped some water, cleared the calls, and opened WeChat. Wow, nearly 200 messages. I scrolled up and skimmed through them, mostly from my father-in-law. Felix, why didn't you get in the ambulance? I can't find you. Contact me ASAP. I have no money with me. Come to City Hospital. Felix, why is your phone off? We're waiting to pay the hospital fees. Felix, you jerk. Playing missing. Even if Lily wronged you, your mom's been good to you, right? And now you vanish. Jerk. Those pictures of yours might not even be real. Could be someone trying to mess with you. Alright. You jerk. Just wait and see. Above that were my father-in-law's nasty messages. Seeing this, I couldn't help but snicker. The old guy finally dropped the act and showed his true colors. Scrolling up, it was just my wife's message bombardment. It's ironic, really. She sent more messages this time than she did in the past 2 years combined. I never knew she needed me this much. Where did you run off to? Why is your phone off? My mom's in the hospital. Don't you know? Why didn't you go see her? The kid's still at his class? And you didn't pick him up. Felix, you're such a jerk. Do you believe every random photo sent to you? It's obviously photoshopped. You actually don't trust me. Are you even human? My mom needs surgery. If it's not done soon, both she and the baby could be in danger. Bring 5 grand over quick. Okay, honey, I'm swallowing my pride here. Please, for the child's sake, bring the money over. Felix, you're useless. You can't even make money. You just disappear. Even if those photos are real, what do they prove? That I'm cheating? It only shows I have good social skills. What a nerve. Does she really think I don't have solid proof of her cheating? She seriously underestimated the private detective's skills. Watching my wife switch between cursing and begging me, I couldn't help but feel a little satisfied. Without me, her life is finally spiraling out of control. Scrolling up further, there were some voice messages. I clicked play. It was my son. Dad, where are you? I miss you. Come back. Dad, I want your fried rice and your braised ribs. I hate takeout. It gives me a stomach ache. Dad, take me home to play games. I don't want to be in the hospital. I hate the smell here. I laughed, but soon my eyes got misty. I shouldn't use him. He's just a kid and shouldn't be hurt like this. My heart softened. Who says kids have to look like their dad? Maybe he really is my son. A month later, my father-in-law threw a lavish 1-month birthday party for the twins at a hotel. The place was buzzing. Practically everyone from my wife's side of the family showed up, along with lots of my father-in-law's former co-workers. The neighbors and elderly folks from the square dance group also came in droves. My father-in-law collected so many gift envelopes his hands went sore. He couldn't stop smiling. They really were strapped for cash. When I saw the messages that day, I gritted my teeth and went to the hospital to pay. After all, 2 kids and my mother-in-law's lives were at stake. I didn't want to be blamed. Luckily, I got there just in time. Afterwards, my wife and I started sleeping in separate rooms. We just couldn't go back to how things were. But suddenly, my wife seemed to change. It was like she finally remembered what I meant to her and started trying to win me back every day. For the sake of my son, I haven't completely severed ties, trying to think of the least damaging way out for him. Today, my wife insisted on dragging me to the party. I kept a cold face. Seeing my in-laws, I felt nothing, just like seeing strangers. Meanwhile, my father-in-law looked at me with more contempt and dissatisfaction, as if somehow I had wronged their whole family. Pathetic. Complete nonsense. I had just settled in when my eyes locked onto someone, Johnny, smiling as he walked into the hall. I shot my wife a dark look. She seemed to shudder, looking at me in shock. Clearly, she had no idea what was going on. Maybe my in-laws invited him. Sure enough, upon seeing Johnny, they lit up and hurried over to greet him. My father-in-law was all smiles and chatter, practically couldn't hide his excitement. Moments later, they headed our way but stopped short. My father-in-law beckoned my wife over with a finger, signaling her to take the child and join them. She glanced at me in panic, but he insisted harder. Eventually, she took our son over. I took a swig of whiskey, keeping a sideways eye on them. Johnny reached down to ruffle the kid's hair, and suddenly it clicked. Here they were, side by side, and it hit me they did look alike, the dimples especially. Made from the same mold. In that moment I got it. They were the real family here. My in-laws must have figured this out much earlier. Hence the show today. They were obviously cozying up to Johnny. My fist clenched tight, veins popping in anger. Just then, Johnny and my wife's eyes met, and the sparks flew. The more I realized, the more I burned with anger. The glass was about to shatter under my grip, but I set it down, got up with a tense expression, and walked out. When I returned to the hall, it was silent. On the big screen, videos of my wife's affair with Johnny played. Not long after, the guests broke out in whispers, pointing fingers and snapping photos. Upon realizing something was wrong, my father-in-law rushed to the screen, shouting, "Turn it off! Turn it off!" But the controls were in the booth. The screen kept playing as people started cheering. Johnny, seeing the footage, turned pale and bolted out with his face covered. My mother-in-law, still recovering, fainted from the shock. Pandemonium ensued. My wife stared at the screen, bewildered, until she finally processed everything. Then, wild-eyed, she searched the room and found me. "Felix, you did this on purpose. You wanted to humiliate me, make my life unbearable. I admitted my mistake, but why are you still treating me like this? I'm dragging you down to hell with me." The voice was deafening. My head buzzed. The world spun around me, and I suddenly burst into laughter. Laughing, I slumped to the ground, head tilted back, tears streaming down my face. These past few years I felt so trapped. Is this really what I wanted? I quietly wiped away my tears, closed my laptop and let out a long sigh, finally finishing the novel, Family Storm. My name's Felix, and I write online novels. When I write, I'm all in, like I'm one of the characters. One minute I'm crying, the next I'm laughing, then I'm acting all weird. Being an adult, it's kinda embarrassing. I quickly patted my face, trying to look more natural. Bang! The study door burst open, making me jump. It's my son, always so reckless. "Dad, Mom's done cooking. Come out and eat." His little voice was so sweet. It melted my heart. Just pulled out of the novel world, realizing how nice it is to join my son and wife for a meal. Feels so happy and wonderful. After dinner, I sipped my tea on the couch. My son played with Legos and my wife, ever gentle and kind, packed my bags in the bedroom. I was heading to City A for a writers' meeting hosted by a novel platform. While packing, she chatted away, I mean, your dad's almost 60, why's he want another kid now? Isn't this making things harder for us? I was about to reply when her phone on the coffee table chimed with a text message. I instinctively craned my neck to look, and a chill ran through me. The message was, "See you tonight, babe." Suddenly, my head buzzed, and the world spun around me. "Felix, I'm talking to you. Why aren't you responding?"